Welcome to The Pitch, brought to you by Livewire Markets. I'm Hans Lee, and if you enjoy hearing from experienced investors who have seen a thing or two in their time, have we got a treat for you today. Joining us is Michael Korber, Managing Director for Credit and Fixed Income at Perpetual. This year he is celebrating 20 years of Perpetual and 40 years in financial markets. And we're going to see if we can't squeeze a few life and investing lessons out of him while he's here. Michael, firstly, welcome and congratulations on the milestone.
Thank you.
So, in your 40 years in markets, I'm curious if you could share what are maybe one or two of the most important lessons you've learned, and maybe what is the biggest change you've had to adapt to as well?
Look, being in the market for a long time, I think one of the things that you really come to realise is that things are always evolving. Things are always changing. There are always new opportunities emerging. There's new risks emerging. And so I think that's probably the big thing to be aware of. And then within that, there are some constants. So there are always cycles. There's always economic cycles, financial cycles. So there's cycles of risk, there's cycles of opportunity. And I think, the thing I've really learnt is that you need to be open-minded as to what's going on. You need to look for opportunities and be willing to take risk. But at the same time, really keep a weather eye on the background, the threats that are emerging. And that balance of risk-taking and managing risk and behaving conservatively ultimately is what drives long-term returns.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, obviously with 40 years of experience, I'm sure there are lots of things that stand out to you from that time, but I'm curious, if you could pick one, is there one moment which stands out to you as an investor from your career?
I think the one that probably most people who've been in the markets for a while would reflect upon is through the global financial crisis, the GFC. That was an event where prior to that moment, things were going along very swimmingly, and almost overnight the world changed. And I think it really just highlighted how, what seems a stable and comfortable environment at one point in time can suddenly be turned on its head. And I think, the position that we had going into that was, we were sensible in terms of our risk. We were managing it well, and as a consequence, when things got really ugly, we saw, I guess, more opportunity than we saw threat. I think if you focus on investing in good assets, you invest sensibly. Even really ugly market cycles can have a silver lining to them.
I don't want to overemphasize, one day, especially with that kind of a track record, but do you remember walking into the office that morning, what it was like when, you realised the world was about to turn over and things were never going to be quite the same?
Oh, look, I think, one thing that I always remember actually is in one of the big flavour of the month investments during that period were things like CDOs and American subprime and those kinds of assets. And reading on the overnight news that a security, which the major ratings agencies had given a AAA rating to, defaulted overnight. And I thought, okay, that's probably as extreme a change as you ever want to see. So that was certainly one that highlighted that, nothing is fixed forever,
No, and nothing stays constant forever, come to think of it. So I'm curious then, now knowing what you know, if you could go back to when you started investing 40 years ago, before your time in Perpetual, before your time in Macquarie, even when you were just starting out at Westpac, what would be the one thing you would have told yourself?
I think the one thing in hindsight, it's sort of interesting because I think in the world of fixed income, everyone focuses on risk correctly. Yep. It's an area that the upside is limited. It's a fixed coupon world. But I think the one thing I'd sort of observed over time is that taking a bit more risk in a well-regulated way works. Being a little bit more risky, I think, than a purely conservative investor is inclined to do, provided it's well managed, it's well researched, it's well diversified, adds up over the years to a fairly significant improvement in your total outcome. So I think a little bit more risk. Sometimes people tend to either be too risky or too conservative. I think there's a middle ground that we need to embrace a little bit more sometimes.
I'm curious because now we segue on to this, and I know that there might be viewers and readers out there who probably joined after 2008. There's used to this, there is no alternative world, or they're used to this idea that income was actually generated in equities rather than bonds, and so on and so on. So If there is a viewer and a reader who may be thinking about investing in the credit markets for the first time, what advice would you give them?
Set of expectations that's appropriate to the asset class. This is not an asset class where you're going to shoot the lights out. It's an asset class where you get, generous, cumulative, predictable returns. And I think for investors, it's a part of the portfolio that, gives you that balance of being able to sleep at night, but over the long term actually generates quite a good return.
And manage your expectations.
And manage your expectations, that's right.
Michael Korber, Perpetual, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing some insights there from your life and your investing career. And thank you for joining us for The Pitch. If you enjoyed that interview, and why wouldn't you have, you can subscribe to the Livewire Market Index websites as well as our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.